Jays fans. Welcome to another week of Blue Jays Talk. This is episode 295, the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by JaysFromTheCouch.com. Hello, Blue Jays fans. We're happy you're back for another week of Blue Jays Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, whether you're watching live on I got it all mixed up here. Let me try again. YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or listening to the audio version on Apple or Google or wherever else you find podcasts. We deeply appreciate it. Come back for more every week, and I want to thank you so much for all of your support, whether you're somebody who comments regularly or simply just listens. We're glad to have you. I'm your host, as always, Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter right there at Doyle JFtC. Joined this week by the feckless wonder himself, host of the On Feck Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Steve, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Shaun. We're both 2-0 in our fantasy league.
That's true. In the Jays from the Couch Fantasy League, Feck and I are 1 and 2, respectively. Of course, Feck is leading, but he hasn't faced me yet, so we'll have to see how long that lasts.
Well, the double players are also 2-0, and Liam is undefeated.
True.
He has the tie and the win.
That's true.
It'll be a matter of time. Yeah, it'll be a matter of time before you complain about, I'm in a tougher division and you've got an easy thing. That's going to happen. I know it's coming, so I'm preparing myself in advance.
No shortage of excuses. And speaking of excuses, we have a built-in excuse this week. Host of Sunny Side of the Dome, Karen Suter, is on the IL this week. Hopefully watching at home. Get well soon, Karen. We miss you. But, Steve, that means we have a built-in excuse. No one's around to keep us sane and normal and not talking out of the wrong orifice, if you will.
Yeah, very true. I mean, that's always a nice balancer, because you can see Karen's face either get sad or get all scrunched up, or she starts to turn red, like our Jays from the Couch shirt behind me here. So it'll be tough to keep that balance, but
it's true.
We'll persevere.
The way I see it is when I watch the screen and I see her reactions, it's like my dog testing the limits, how far it can go away from, its bed, right? It's watching me, and when you reach that point. But anyway, Karen, get better. Hopefully you'll be back this week. I want to let everybody know we've been hearing a lot of feedback from you. Thank you so much, whether you're sending us messages on Twitter at Jays from Couch or emailing at info at JaysFromCouch.com. Thank you so much. Keep those comments and questions coming. And of course, you can join our live broadcast every week, Mondays at 6 p.m. Jump on here, give us a listen, a watch, and ask your questions and leave your comments and tell us that we're wrong and we're full of it and we're talking out of the wrong orifice again. And we'll put it right up here on the screen, and we'll respond in a loving fashion, of course. And of course, Rocket, just like this. Rocket's timing is impeccable. I'm talking about it, throws up a comment just like that. Hey, Rocket, thanks for watching every week, and good to see you here. And if Karen's not watching, we'll definitely pass on your well wishes. And speaking of, I think it's time, Steve, that we also give a shout out, a huge shout out to the folks in North Tonawanda watching at the bar. Butchie has us up playing in the bar every show. Your show, Carrot's show, and of course the podcast. And I just want to send a special shout out to those guys. Poor Butchie, especially when we bash the Yankees, right? He's not getting a tip that night.
Well, exactly. I mean, basically, there's been a couple of near riots. I mean, not as bad, I hope, as what happened against the Guardians on Saturday. But, Yankee fans have that knack of just being very Putinish. So hopefully, as we're talking there now, they're not throwing glasses or throwing beer at each other at this point as we're talking. I go way back with those guys. A lot of them actually remember when I was still on the radio in Buffalo, way back. So it's great to have them listen. Thanks, Butchie. Thanks, Sue. Thanks the whole gang.
Absolutely appreciate it. And you know what? While we're at it, let's throw another one up here at Facebook. Matt John is watching. Amazing show, guys. Love the content and love to listen in the morning in the UK. Steve, we've gotten international.
It's, let's say cream rises to the top.
Or floats across the ocean.
Exactly. Though it should be said too that Blue Jays UK podcast is another great show, another great Blue Jay centric show. They have the diaspora of Blue Jay fans. It's pretty impressive. There's a group in Belgium, in the UK, a couple of groups in Western New York and here in the States. So it's plenty more room to jump on the bandwagon too, there, folks. So
absolutely. There's 7 billion people in the world. There's room for everybody here on the Jays from the Couch podcast. And Sarah, as well, watching on YouTube, always much watch, or Facebook, I should say. Good evening to you, Sarah. Always must watch TV. And oh my goodness, Christian Rao, Angel Hernandez called the strikes and balls during our fantasy matchup versus Doyle this week. You know what? Excuses, excuses, excuses. Christian is, of course, a little upset because I beat him in this week as well to remain undefeated after some trash talk going both ways. Although I will admit I probably started it, but all is forgiven because let me see if I can find it here. I'm going to throw this bad boy up here and see if I can. I've never done this before, but I would like to share the screen here. See if I know how to work this frigging machine. But let me see if I can do this. Oh heck, we're going wild here. Are we ready for this?
I am ready.
Okay. Let me see if you can see what Christian shared today. Look at what just came in to start his week off right. If you haven't seen our amazing shows and content, you're missing out. Plus, all proceeds from our merch goes straight to the fight against ALS. Check it out here. Got himself a Jays from the Couch mug. Nice. And you know what? It's a perfect time to mention our Redbubble shop, where 100% of the profits go directly to the ALS Society of Canada, where you can help fund research and support for folks living with ALS, the terrible disease. So go to Redbubble, look for Jays from the Couch, pick yourself up something pretty. Mother's Day is coming up, splurge. And 100% of the profits go directly to the ALS Society of Canada. So thank you, Christian, for your support, of course. And Sarah says that Karen's at home shaking her head at us already, which I wouldn't be surprised, but certainly not over this ALS thing, because Karen herself has purchased quite a bit of swag. So yeah.
Yeah, I see Sarah's actually featuring her cat on her Facebook profile. So that kind of substitutes the parade of cats, of felines that we generally have when Karen's on the air live. So it's all like Karen's with us vicariously through a cat. So
absolutely. And you can see to my, wherever this is on your screen, like the sun is shining right here. And I choose to think of that as Karen shining her light on our show. And we've been rambling now for almost 10 minutes without actually talking about some Blue Jay stuff. So before I get to, Matt's got a question here over in the UK, and I think it's a good one, and I'll throw it up here on the screen. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up here. This week we're going to talk about the rampant injuries in Major League Baseball. We're going to talk about Jordan Romano's usage, which, you can't help but talk about that. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Cavan Biggio, whether he's lost his place, on this Blue Jays roster, and maybe, even if we have time, we'll touch on the legitimacy of Zach Collins. Can we believe it or not? And then we'll hit up some of our fake news, of course. But we might as well start with Matt's question over in the UK. What are the thoughts on Bichette and not looking at his best yet? For me personally, Steve, I don't know how you feel, but I'm not so concerned with Bo Bichette at this point in the season. Sure, it's been 2.5 weeks or so. It's not bad. It's not great, of course, but I think the real issue here is that Bo Bichette has been so friggin' good right from the moment he joined the team that we're seeing him kind of work around some struggling a little bit, right? What are your thoughts on Bichette?
Well, again, I think he's not the only, all-star caliber shortstop having early struggles. Carlos Correa's hitting 197. You look across the board. I mean, a lot of big hitters are just off to a slow start. I'm a little concerned. I won't say worried about his play in the field. I don't. It looks like he's trying to rush things. I mean, like he's actually trying to complete the play before the ball's actually got into his glove and before he's got into position. But that's Bo Bichette. Just like at the plate, you think, "Oh my God, why is he swinging at that?" But then the next thing you know, that pitch is bouncing off the wall into right or left field gaps. Because he's just an aggressive kind of player. Everyone's going to run into their issues. I'm not overly concerned about it. Certainly not at the plate. At the field, maybe he's still trying to compensate and trying to get used to Matt Chapman. He's not used to that caliber third baseman on his other side. So there's a lot of things that could play into it, but it's pretty early. What are we, 16 games in?
Yeah.
If this is May and we're having this conversation, then concern goes to worry.
Agreed. And of course, just playing in Houston where it looked like, at least on television, that the infield was playing in the mud flats of like friggin' Utah or something. It was like just ridiculous how gross it looked, right? So maybe that was a whole new feeling. He's not used to that. He's actually used to regular dirt on top of concrete. Anyway, so let's get right to it. Our Major League Baseball Minute, the MLB Minute, talking about the injuries around baseball. Offense is down, Steve, across baseball. We keep hearing that, but the injuries are not. So 1 minute, Blue Jays are facing some injuries, not to the extent of some other teams. Like they haven't. Vlad's still there. George Springer. Hey, George Springer's still healthy, right? So there is reason to celebrate, I guess. But overall, injuries are a problem across baseball. So I'm going to give you a minute here, Steve, to discuss Major League Baseball and injuries.
Okay, well, when I put together the MLB Minute piece about the injuries, I tried to focus on the Blue Jays aspect of it, and I'll get to that in just a second. But yes, there are serious, injuries. They seem to be muscle related injuries for the most part, not completely. So that's saying that the player's conditioning perhaps isn't where it needs to be. Now, in the case of the Blue Jays, you had two injuries that occurred on swings. They're going to occur in July, August, during any season. A very aggressive hard swinger in Hernandez. Danny Jansen has kind of changed his approach, trying to drive more balls. Then you look, Springer was out for a little bit, got hit by a pitch. That happens throughout the year in baseball. And Ryan Borucki and Nate Pearson, is it more of a shock that we're talking that they're on the injured list, or would be more of a surprise that they're not in the injured list? So the Blue Jays have kind of gotten lucky, to this stage. But if the muscle type injuries keep occurring, you have to wonder, do you need to start looking at the strength and conditioning coaching approach and perhaps make some tweaks?
Yeah. Sorry, I'll start my clock here. If this were later in the season, it might be, first of all, it would certainly be more impactful. Like missing games in April isn't as bad as missing a game or a series of games or 10 games in late September. If your starting pitcher, if a solid starting pitcher like Ryu, one of the guys you're counting on, goes down in September, that's a bigger problem than it is in April. So that's the first thing. So I don't get too concerned about those injuries. The other thing is I really believe that spring training being short had a bit to do with it, not just for the Blue Jays, but just in general around baseball. Pitchers did not have enough time to ramp up to 4, 5, 6 innings. Typically in a normal, typical spring training, you see them to the point where they can start the season and get up to about 6 innings or so. So I think that's part of it. Certainly don't think it's all of it, but I don't worry about it as much now. But ask me again in September, then the answer will be much different, of course. So the Major League Baseball Minute, Every Monday, Steve has the major MLB Minute up on JFtC.com, where he looks
Every
around.
Sunday.
What did I say?
Monday.
Yeah, well, today's Monday, and it's been a Monday. So
well, technically, it's still on the site Monday because you usually don't take it down. So it's technically on the sites on Monday. But yes.
True story. So check out the MLB Minute on JFromTheCouch.com. And while you're there, check out Ryan Mueller's minor league baseball reports. Speaking of next week, episode 296, Ryan will be on here, and we're going to have an episode dedicated to minor league, Blue Jays minor leagues, and it's going to be awesome. Love listening to Ryan talk about minor league baseball. All right, now let's dive into this here. Jordan Romano, of course, tied for the league lead in saves with 8 already. And as you said, we've only played not even double that many games. And he's already tied for the league lead in with Josh Hader of the Brewers. And he has 8 saves, and everything was going smoothly. And then everybody had to, in yesterday's game against the Astros, everybody had to get on talking about his consecutive save streak. And then, of course, what happened? It came to an end, and his ERA shot up to 2. but here's the question, Steve, and everybody's asking about it. So my question is very simple for you. Has Jordan Romano been used too much?
He has not been used too much. He has been used perhaps in wrong situations.
Now I'm going to
such as when he took over for Kevin Gausman. Did you really need to have Jordan Romano come in for that game? And it becomes, a rolling snowball. So then the next day, everybody's complaining, oh, Romano's not available. We have to pitch Simber, and Simber struggled a little bit. Well, if you hadn't put Romano in to back up a terrific game by Kevin Gausman, who he should have been able to be allowed to finish, by the way, but that's another show, another topic. Then you have Romano in that situation. So now you're not talking about Simber. So, I mean, it rolls on. So the question is really, is the pitching strategy, the pitching plan that comes down from the front office and handed down to Pete Walker and Charlie Montoyo, is that the problem? Or is it just, okay, just one of everybody's amplifying the fact, oh my God, he blew a save after not blowing a save in 31 consecutive chances, so there's a lot of that involved there too. But I really think it's more of, we have to look at it again, not over the 16 games, over the next couple of months. Are they using him properly?
Right. And that's very interesting, because if I'm Charlie Montoyo, I'm looking at a 1-run lead. What else am I going to think? Jordan Romano, he's your best reliever. He's your closer. What else are you going to do? You kind of can't, and as much as it's very difficult sometimes to listen to Pat Tabler, he's often fond of saying, you can't look too far ahead. You've got to get business done here and now. Right. And so do I blame Charlie Montoyo for going with his best option? No, I don't. Jordan Romano's going to blow a save. It happens. All the best closers do blow a save here and there. Mariano Rivera has blown saves. It's not a big deal. In fact, I seem to recall once Vernon Wells went deep off him to blow a save, and I thought, woohoo! Anyway, but my question then becomes, if that's your response in April, how many times can you go to that well? Is it just the law of averages that Romano's bound to blow a save? Or is there really belief that he's just never going to blow a save? And then you can just keep riding that horse for 160 games if you need to. I find that hard to believe, because there would have to be something mentally wrong with you to be thinking, yeah, I can use him every night. Is there a lack of faith in other options? Those are the questions that come to my head. And of course, we're talking about one blown save in a long season. So perhaps myself and the rest of Blue Jays land is making a mountain out of a molehill here. perhaps it's not that big a deal, but I do have questions about why always Jordan Romano, Jordan Romano, Jordan Romano. Is it because the belief is that he's that good, or is it a lack of faith in the rest?
Well, I don't know that there's a lack of faith in the rest. Okay, now if you're talking about, do I bring in Romano or Taylor Saucedo or Anthony Kay? Okay, I mean, you're going to bring in Jordan Romano if those are your two options left in your bullpen. But again, it goes back to the point that I made earlier. Romano can handle a workload over the course of the season. It seems like it's all crunched together because the bullpens had to come in earlier and earlier in games. So you're having to bring him in the ninth inning,
Mhm.
to save the games. But again, with a 3-run lead, why do you bring Jordan Romano in? Why not? Garcia. Well, I think Garcia may have been unavailable that game, in fairness to Charlie on that one. But you can't be a slave to matchups. And that is something that that's why Charlie Montoyo, I think, likes these reports coming down from the front office, because he is just absolutely obsessed with matchups. And, if he's going to see there and say, gee, two of these three guys, they're hitting under 200 against Romano. I'm going to bring him in this thing. That's when you're starting to use him improperly.
Mhm.
And then rather thinking about the big picture, you're just trying to get to the next day. So that's my big concern. It's not that Romano has pitched as often. Maybe there are opportunities like that like that game in Boston where he didn't need to come in, that they could have
Mhm.
actually let him rest an extra day and then use him in a closer one-run ball game like you mentioned.
Right. And I got to say, I do love, Charlie's I'm out to win every game. I have to say, like, that's something that we may not have seen certainly in 2019 or 2020. But we now it's I think there's a sense that every game is important and we need to win every game, and I'm going to pull out whatever I need to pull out to win every game because one in the hand. However, you, when you do that, if Jordan Romano doesn't get hurt, first of all, that's a blessing. But you can't expect that he's going to save every save opportunity. Like
Right.
that's just dumb thinking. Christians watching on YouTube, if they continue to win one-run ball games, they need to look for another high leverage guy to help anchor the pen with Romano, and that's absolutely true. And excuse me, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you even mentioned something similar to this behind the scenes at Jason McCouch.
Mhm.
How they really, outside of Jimmy Garcia, they didn't really do much to address that high leverage bullpen issue.
Yeah, that's true. And then again, there's only so many dollars. I know Blue Jay fans like to think, well, gee, Rogers Communications is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The baseball aspect of it isn't a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay, there is limited. Eventually, there's going to be a cap or a ceiling about how much you can spend. Ross Atkins in the front office decided, let's get Matt Chapman, let's bring in Kevin Gossman. Before that it was Springer and Ryu and all those type of things. So they focused in on that. And as they kind of did, in Cleveland, when Atkins was, the minor league coordinator under Shapiro in Cleveland, when they had their good years, often kind of made do with the bullpen to start the year. And then they added pieces, not necessarily big star pieces, but they added pieces later in the year as they were going for an AL Central title to try to kind of bring it all together, have it all gel, and maybe have players go into less leverage but essential situations that they could pitch multiple innings. So I think that's the approach that they're going to go with, and a lot of teams have done that. The Braves have done that. The Rays do that every year. They find pitchers, I don't know, on Pluto or Saturn or wherever they get these guys. They always find pitchers that can fill a role. And I think that's the approach the Blue Jays made. Let's actually make our offense so awesome and have our rotation, be, if not, in the top five, certainly in the upper half of the American League. Let's have that. And then we can tinker down the stretch, as we get closer to the trade deadline.
And to that, I would say, like, I agree. I think that is the approach, but I think that what I would also say is that I agree with it as an approach, because I think that if you're going out in the off season trying to secure a high leverage arm like a Liam Hendricks or whatever have you, you're going to spend more than you did for Kikuchi. So it does is if we're looking at as from like a cost effectiveness approach, I don't think it is cost effective to go out and seek in the off season either a trade or through free agency one of these high potency arms to go with Romano. I think what you do is you do exactly what they did because relievers are fluid. Their effectiveness
Mhm.
can be fluid. Just
Yeah.
ask them when they traded for Brad Hand last year. You know, from one day to the next, from one game to the next, from one season to the next, of any group starting pitchers or offensive players, bullpens are really difficult to predict. So I don't necessarily see a flaw in their approach, but I agree with you that was probably their approach, and
Mhm.
then they'll address it like they did with Adam Simber and Trevor Richards mid-season if they have to.
Right.
This is another issue that I have, and Rocket hit it right on the head here. You have to give Pena some credit on that blown save. I assume BS stands for blown save, Rocket, because because when Pena hit it, I did actually say BS. But that kid hit a pretty good pitch. He actually did. Honestly, I'm more upset with the offense not getting the extra run in from third with less than 2 outs in the top of the 10th. And I think this is really something that will potentially even out. You gotta hope that
Mhm.
the offense just comes around and these one run games aren't as frequent. And the need for a Jordan Romano every friggin' night isn't as frequent. So I think that's the other thing that we haven't talked about really is the position that the offense is putting the club in. But I think that's a bigger discussion perhaps for another day because I'd love to talk about Cavan Biggio.
Okay.
We've got here's a guy who came up in 2019 and captured the hearts and the minds and the imaginations of a lot of Blue Jays fans with his style of play, with his baseball IQ, as we say. But I have a piece up today about Jays from the Couch about Cavan Biggio and kind of like where he stands now. You got to wonder how much of a future he has right now. Combining the fact that he was hurt last year with the playing out of position, the offensive struggles, and now he's got one whole hit to start the season, and then he has a bad game, not a bad game, but he went hitless again yesterday. Pulled for a matchup which we wouldn't have seen 2 years ago. You know, we would have seen Cavan Biggio stay in against a lefty pitcher. We did not see that. He's lifted. And then, of course, Santiago Espinal decides that he's going to play like he's Babe friggin' Ruth or Mickey Mantle or something. And now you can't get him out of the lineup because why would you? And now here's Biggio looking around going, what about me? And so, Steve, I guess my question is, what in your mind, what is going on with Cavan Biggio? Because he has hit the IL, which I want to talk about after here in a bit. But what in your mind, what's going on with Biggio?
I think Biggio is becoming the player that the Blue Jays need him to be, not the player that we as fans expect him to be. And I steal that idea from Keegan Matheson. He has a beat report newsletter that I get, on a regular basis. And he talked about Biggio's value not only with versatility, but as a voice and a stabilizing force in the clubhouse. Okay, people, like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. When Cavan Biggio talks in the clubhouse, people listen. We want Cavan Biggio to be he's not going to be better than Vladdy or better than Bo or even better than Teoscar and Lourdes, but we want him to be that because he was among the core. What they need Cavan Biggio to do is become that super utility role player. Dare I say, Joe Panic kind of a player, and not necessarily put the pressure on him. Like, okay, he needs to be, an all-star second baseman. Espinal has won the job. he still needs support. He's not going to play every game, so Biggio can play in when the matchup's right. Biggio's going to rest Matt Chapman when his hip flares up. Biggio played first base the other day. He can play the two corner outfield positions. He could probably even play center field. He won't be like a Gold Glover, but he could do that. That's what the team needs to do. And on Twitter, there was a conversation that I was involved in. We talked about setting Biggio down. I think that would be a great thing for Biggio because the AAA manager is Casey Candell. When he came up with the Expos, he had a similar year to what Biggio had in 2019 and 1987. And then suddenly he just was having problems in the field. He had injuries. He wasn't hitting. And it took him going back to the minors for a season and a half before he kind of gained his confidence. And then when he went to Houston, he was a starting shortstop for a while, but then he was bouncing all over the place, and he was a very valuable player as that team was building. So I think we need to get away from Cavan Biggio All-Star and Cavan Biggio, the player the Blue Jays need him to be.
And I don't disagree that that's what they're trying to do. I disagree that they're trying to do it. I guess I disagree that they should be doing it. And it, for me, what it signals to me is the value that they have placed on Cavan Biggio. To me, that's what it says, because they are not doing it with Bo Bichette. They're not doing it with Vladdy. Now, of course, Biggio is not going to put up Vladdy numbers. We know this. He's not even going to put up Bichette numbers. We know this. But he, as a second baseman, could be, and I'm not even worried about whether he's going to be an all-star. I'm just talking about being himself. And they are not letting him be himself. If they're trying to turn him into this utility guy because they want to have one, well, maybe go out and find one and let him do what we know he can do. When you try and make guys, I don't know, I think at the highest level, if you try and get people to do something that they're not designed to do, or that's just not them, you're asking for trouble. You're forcing that square peg into a round hole. And that, to me, I'm just going to say it, and somebody out there can call me on it or whatever, but I really think that the Blue Jays have been disrespectful to Cavan Biggio, the baseball player. I really believe that we don't have a third baseman, and it's not going to be Vladdy, so go ahead, Cavan, you're over there now. Oh, you're hurt? Well, yeah, sucks to be you, I guess. We're going to sign Marcus Semien and take your position away from you, by the way. So you're going to have to play third. Now, here he is, and he can't even if he is healthy now, he can't even get enough playing time to kind of get his groove back. And then this idea of forcing him into other roles, to me, that just furthers the disrespect to him as a baseball player. And I get it's a business and you want people to perform certain roles. I get it, but I don't think it's a great idea at the expense of somebody's overall major league career. And it's starting to look like that's what's happening to Biggio. But maybe I'm being melodramatic. I don't know. Somebody out there can say it, but that's just how I'm feeling.
I don't know that you're being melodramatic. I think that when you have a player like Cavan Biggio and you watched him his first year and a half, and you saw what could be, it's hard to accept that perhaps at this stage, because Biggio's makeup and baseball IQ is at the level, he has a Vladimir Guerrero on-field talent, baseball IQ, and approach to the game. You can go to him and say, Cavan, we need you to do this. We need you to do that. Chris Taylor's of the world. They struggle, but you give them that chance. Do you, given what your team is now, do you take away at bats from Santiago Espinal? You don't. Biggio can handle it. He can. Okay. Is he going to have the career that down deep he probably really wants? Probably not. But he's going to hang around an awfully long time. But even if it's not necessarily in Toronto the whole time, he's going to have himself a long career because he is a team first baseball IQ savant that can do whatever you ask him. If you asked him to catch, I bet you he can turn into a catcher.
Yeah, I don't question that he would do it. I don't question that he would say yes and he would do whatever the team needs. But is the team doing what's in the best interest of the player? That's my concern because I don't, if let's just say if they leave Cavan Biggio at second, would he, maybe, who knows, would he be fine and would he be that player that we all thought he would be? I guess we'll never know because right now we have so much tinkering with him that, you know, I just worry for him. And now he's 27. Everybody keeps saying, well, if he's 27 and he hasn't figured it out, well, he was 25
Mhm.
and he had it figured out. And then injuries and tinkering happened. And now here we are saying he's 27 and he doesn't have it figured out. Like that's, anyway, I hope to God that Cavan Biggio finds it, and maybe AAA is the place to do that. It worked for others in the past. Maybe that's the place to do it, but he finds it and he comes back and he, earns and wins his second base job back. And I know that means Santiago Espinal's got to go, but you're right. In this offense, the way they're hitting right now, you can't. It's really hard to justify
Mhm.
keeping Biggio over Espinal, which I totally agree with. Speaking of offense, I want to quickly. We had one more point here to talk about, and that is Zach Collins. Um, I guess Steve, it's a very simple question: is this legit? Are we seeing? Can we expect to see this all year, or is this the offense that he's putting out there right now? Is that just kind of a peak in a season of peaks and more valleys?
Uh, I think he has a season like this in him. I mean, I go back to watching him play at the University of Miami. So I never got why he struggled so much with the White Sox. Again, it could be were they tinkering with the swing. He certainly didn't look like the same hitter the rare times you saw him play, with the White Sox that he was in college. But sometimes it clicks for whatever reason. It comes together. I mean, okay, is he going to hit 40 home runs? No, but he's going to provide some pop off the bench. I think he's a better defensive catcher than a lot of reports indicated for when he came in. So I don't see why Zach Collins can't have a quote unquote career year here in a year when the Blue Jays can use as many career years as they can get.
Right, and especially when Danny Jansen seemed to have, you know, his offense seems to have clicked, and then he goes
Mhm.
on the IL. It doesn't hurt that you've got Mr. Collins there waiting in the wings to put up some home runs and some numbers, in his absence, and then make the catching discussion back to three, right? Because now it's really down to two, and Zach Collins is just kind of there, whereas Reese McGuire wasn't necessarily in that position. He was kind of, a 2A or a 2B, I should say, option. But clearly, if you're looking at Jansen, Kirk, and Collins, you're going to, Collins is option number three, right? But good for him for putting it, for carrying that catcher spot because Jansen
Yeah.
I feel bad for that guy, right? Because just he was clicking and now he's oblique, had enough of his 15 minutes of fame. So the oblique said, "Yeah, I'm going to take a break here." Um, yeah. Anyway, it's interesting though because at the time everybody was like, "Oh my God, you're trading away Reese McGuire for this," and what are you doing? You're kind of downgrading. You're really paying more for team control than you should. But now it's kind of at this moment looking like a pretty smart pickup, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I get on Atkins, and I probably will until either the day I die or the day he gets fired, whatever comes first. He does have a knack of finding these players. I mean, and the whole front office team, Tony LaCava, their minor who I keep forgetting who their minor league coordinator is, but all of those guys seem to find these little diamonds in the rough, and they're not afraid to bring them in. And at least now they're actually giving them a chance. It isn't like when they brought in Vogel back and they had him for a week and a half, and then he either ate his way out of town or they just wanted to bring somebody else back in. So they let Vogel back go right away. They have a knack for finding those kind of players. So I will tip my hat to Ross about that. He's not afraid to mine uh, a gold mine that perhaps wasn't putting out the yield that it did in the past, but now if you dig a little deeper or you go a little here or shine your light this way, maybe you're going to find a little couple more gold pieces. So,
Mm-hmm. And Mark Nolan at Jason the Couch has a piece on Kikuchi, kind of in that same vein.
mhm.
They may have found actually somebody who could be a diamond in the rough with a few tweaks, and we've seen
Oh,
them
I agree.
in the past. So so check that out at Jason from the Couch. So we're just about out of time here. Whether Zach Collins is legit or not, that remains to be seen. But certainly right now, whether he is or isn't, it's a good replacement for Danny Jansen while he's on the IL. But you know what time it is. It's time for Jays from the Couch's ever popular fake Blue Jays news segment. But before we dive into that, Steve, let everybody know how they can follow you and all that.
Well, if they're looking at the screen, they're not averting their eyes because of just the sheer monstrousness that I am. It's at Feckless Wonder on Twitter. You can send me an email, fecklesswonder@jaysfromthecouch.com. We referred earlier, every Sunday, MLB Minute. I kind of take a look at the major league landscape, kind of tie it into the Blue Jays some way. And then I do a weekly preview, this week in preview rather than this week in review, where we look at the upcoming series. And I just try to find interesting or fun little tidbits about whoever the opponents are coming up, look at some matchups that you might want to pay attention to. That's generally every Sunday and Monday. And that keeps me from spewing my usual stuff in articles. You have to wait for the On Fec Circle Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time for that.
Hey, listen, you spew away, my friend. Spew away. Before we get to our fake news, Christian has a question here. The Rao report. Do you, Feck, still think Jansen can be an all-star once he returns?
Well, considering how many American League catchers aren't hitting right now, yeah, perhaps. But I think because of the amount of time that he's going to miss, I don't know that he's going to garner the attention of the public and the media, where I really think he was showing what I was promoting during spring training, that Danny Jansen is an all-star catcher.
Right. And if he comes back and doesn't miss a beat and continues on the way, he just might be an all-star. But, you know, first of all, oblique injuries have a way of lingering sometimes. And of course, it directly impacts your swing. So, you know, fingers crossed for Jansen. And I just want him to come back and be healthy and hit the way he was hitting. And then if he's an all-star, great. But, ugh, man, I just want him back. That's all. Danny, please come back. Anyway, all right. Without further ado, Jays from the Couch proudly presents fake Blue Jays news. Steve, over to you.
Hey, breaking news out of Ottawa this evening. A spokesperson for Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office has confirmed that Russian cyber terrorists have successfully hacked into the scouting and pitching systems of the Toronto Blue Jays for some reason. The hack at first went unnoticed by government and team officials since the strategic impacts were so sporadic, and manager Charlie Montoyo has never been mistaken for Casey Stengel or Alex Cora. Team president Mark Shapiro reported the suspected compromises after speaking with Montoyo and GM Ross Atkins following the removal of Kevin Gausman after 8 shutout innings last week in Boston. The Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, in coordination with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, investigated the team inquiry and pinpointed the sources of interference as originating from St. Petersburg, Russia. The Prime Minister's office has announced that successful retaliation hacks have been executed. Cybersecurity experts have been able to take the strike zone efficiency reports for umpires Jeff Nelson and Angel Hernandez and convert them into fake logistics and troop location data being sent to Russian generals and military analysts in the Ukraine and Crimea. Speaking of technology, Rogers Communications, the parent company for the Toronto Blue Jays, has been working with Shapiro and baseball operations personnel to test and develop a new virtual assistant device for the managers and coaching staffs at every level of the organization to use during the games. Named Teddy, after the late Rogers chairman Edward Ted Rogers, the device will respond to baseball-related strategy and personnel questions based on team-generated computer reports. For example, they could say, Teddy, it's the 5th inning. Should I take my starter out of the game now? Or, Teddy, why are Taylor Saucedo and Gasuke Kato on my active roster? Or, Teddy, is Randall Grichuk really batting .405 for the Rockies? To make the device sound more realistic, the soothing, authoritarian voice of Buck Martinez will provide the answers to strategic questions, and the backward tracking voice of Ross Atkins will be available to explain roster moves. Over to you, Shaun.
Somebody talking. Hey, Teddy, where can I get a cup of coffee? Amazing. All right. In other fake Blue Jays news, to prove what a classy organization they are, the Toronto Blue Jays, for their upcoming series against the Boston Red Sox, they have bought gift baskets for the visiting players. The basket includes a lot of Blue Jay swag, Lourdes Gurriel bobbleheads, etc., etc. But for a few special players, they get to take a take-home bag with COVID vaccines in them. We're just warming up, folks. Stay with us. In other news, Jays from the Couch has learned that some players have questioned the abundant usage of Jordan Romano to start the season, and Charlie Montoyo, eager to show he's open and willing to grow, has reached out to former Blue Jays managers to seek some advice. Cito Gaston told him, just score more runs. Seriously, start hitting better. John Gibbons giggled, told him to relax. It's just one of those things. But if someone's really giving you trouble, just choke them out. Buck Martinez even had some words of encouragement that centered around Teoscar Hernandez. At least we think that's what he was trying to say. And finally, Tim Johnson simply told Charlie that if he feels he's losing control of the clubhouse, make up a story about serving in Afghanistan or something. It worked for him. Charlie, of course, to his credit, has indicated that he'll be seeking a fifth and maybe even a sixth opinion. And that has been fake Blue Jays news. I have too much fun doing those, and Sarah's enjoying them. I'm just going to throw this up on the screen because I don't think anybody has ever texted the word giggle snort, and it's now a part of our podcast. It is part of history.
Yes.
So thank you, Sarah, for that. It's in the archives. Appreciate it. Speaking of which, I want to thank everybody for watching at home on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. We really appreciate the live views, but also the interaction. It's been great. The comments coming in from all over, including the UK. Matt, hope you have a great day. Yeah, the day can only go up from here. It's like burnt toast for breakfast. That's what our show is. So thanks a lot, Matt, and of course Rocket and Christian Rao and Sarah. We deeply appreciate your constant support and all of that fun stuff. And of course, Steve, thank you to you for joining me this week. Filling in, you're doing double duty in a sense, filling in for Karen as well. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You probably shouldn't say that. That's going to really offend Karen to say that I'm even remotely trying to fill her shoes, because I think that would really upset her.
Well, I got to tell you that I think like when my son tries my shoes on all the time, right? He fills them in a sense, but he doesn't fill them. And nobody can ever fill Karen's shoes, of course. But you make a go of it, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Okay.
And on a completely unrelated note, Karen, get better. Come back.
Yes, please. Yes.
I joke, of course. I appreciate it, Steve, as always. And so for everybody listening at home on Apple, Google, Spotify, thank you so much. If you like what you hear, tell your friends, get them to subscribe. Automatic downloads to your device every week. It's perfect. You hardly have to do anything to enjoy Jays from the Couch. And if you wish, for anybody out there, if you have already, we deeply appreciate it. But if you haven't, please consider making a donation to our ALS event. The link is on our website. You can also visit our Redbubble shop to get lots of cool swag and merchandise. And 100% of the profits go to the ALS Society of Canada. And I would be forever grateful on a personal human level. I appreciate that very much. So for Steve, for Karen at home, for everybody at Jays from the Couch, this has been Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle and you do not miss it. Take care, everybody.